Did you go to that conference?
Yeah, sure. I sat through every minute of it.
How do they treat you? They know you're there to probably write something.
They wouldn't let me. They had a queue of people for the microphones to ask questions and join the line. It was noticed even by some conservative people there present who actually had the decency to protest about it. But as soon as it came to my turn to get to the microphone, Norman Podhoretz, who was the chairman of the thing, cut off the discussion at that point. I mean, it was so blatant as to be laughable. But I was flattered by it.
Who's your favorite conservative writer in the United States?
William Safire. I'm a very great admirer of his. I think he's a wonderful writer. I think he's a very humorous writer. I think he's quite a brave writer too. He tries to remember that even though when his own team are in power, that doesn't mean you're obliged to stop criticizing.
Who's your favorite liberal writer?
I don't think liberals make very good writers. I think liberals are always trying to have it both ways. They both want to be. They want to share in the idea that capitalism is basically the best humanity can do, but they want to be able to be compassionate about it. I mean, I think that leads to a rather sickly kind of writing, the sort you get from Anthony Lewis, for example. I find it very hard to read, and in fact I think it is harder to read than it is to write. I think of the radical writers, though, there are some outstanding cases. Well, I mentioned Gore Vidal already, who I think is one of the best writers of this or any other time, and who is the person I've most, I guess, tried to model myself on, in that he's so much of a polymath. I mean, he has such a range and tries to synthesize literature and politics very brilliantly. So I openly confess to a sort of, it'd be wrong to say penis envy for Gore Vidal, wouldn't it? But you know what I mean. And then there's Alexander Cockburn, my colleague at The Nation, who's an extreme master writer of polemic, and there's currently operating in print. Well, you see, the problem is that, I mean, if I was to mention many other names, they would be names that never see the mass media, because in effect the left doesn't exist as a regular contributor to the ongoing national discussion on TV and radio and the print.
The Nation, June 1991. What the hell did General Norman Schwarzkopf think he was doing when he accepted, while he was still a senior serving officer, a knighthood from Queen Elizabeth II?
Yes. Question I could never get him or anyone at the Pentagon to answer. The Constitution of the United States, which I am, well, consecrated to admiring, because I come from a country that doesn't have a constitution, and so I think I appreciate it maybe more than people take it for granted. Very clearly says that American serving officials shall not take decorations or titles of honor from any foreign monarch or head of state, and there was Schwarzkopf being knighted by Queen Elizabeth. I thought, what is this? We're supposed to have a republic here, and a republic of laws at that. And I can't stand it when people think that the highest honor that can come to them is to be allowed to sprawl at the feet of the House of Windsor, which is a dysfunctional royal family that is now pretty much discredited even in England.
February 1991, The Nation again, Bush and Churchillian delusions. According to the 11 February issue of the New Republic, the scene that follows occurred one day after the proud inauguration of Operation Desert Storm. It starts off that Jack Kemp, the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, brought a copy of Winston and Clementine, a book about the Churchills, to the cabinet meeting on January the 17th, intending to give it to President Bush. And you go on to say there's more. What was your point?
That Bush, throughout that whole war, and especially in the run-up to it, constantly compared himself to Churchill and compared the confrontation that he was faced with to the one that Churchill had to endure in 1939, borrowed from the speeches, used phrases like the defining hour and so on, which are knockoffs of Churchill's speeches in 1939, 1940, wanted the comparison to be made. In the Senate debate for and against the war, the Churchill-Munich analogy was used more often even than Vietnam, as a test of which side you were on. And I again wondered why it is that in the United States people are such pushovers for this English mythology. And I also said there was no way that, however it was sliced, that Bush could come off as Churchill. After all, as we now know, the war with, and as a lot of us guessed at the time, the war with Saddam Hussein was a quarrel that had broken out between two business partners, Bush and Hussein, who were fighting over the spoils. They wanted to involve everyone else in it, and they wanted for it to sound noble. And they fooled a lot of people for some of the time. But as you know, the disillusionment with that war and the rhetoric with which it was fought is now pretty near total.
Spent some time in jail. Didn't you spend some time in jail in Prague?
In jail in Prague, yes, I did. I thought for me, I thought this was to be the consequence of my saying what I said about the Great Patriotic War in the Desert. Yeah, I did. I got locked up in Czechoslovakia in 1988, I think it was. I went with a delegation of people there to meet the Czech opposition, and we got caught trying to hold a seminar, and we were locked up and then deported.
What was that like?
And I wrote a piece then saying that I thought it was obvious that that the Czech and Polish and East German and Bulgarian regimes, the Russian Empire in Eastern Europe, was going to collapse, because it seemed to me absolutely clear that the regime had no further support at all. It was simply living on police tactics.
What was it like being in jail?
In my case, it was exhilarating because of the people I was locked up with, who were wonderful. A very nice selection of various Western human rights activists, and some incredibly brave Czechs who, of course, were taking much more of a risk than we were, because we knew probably we were going to get taken to the airport and thrown out. And they might have to stay for rather longer, but what impressed me about them was that many of them had not even been born at the time of the Soviet invasion in 1968. So that they had no memory, as it were, of the pre-existing regime. They'd been brought up under the Russian dispensation, and they'd seen through it completely and were prepared to take risks to defy it. I thought, well, that spells the end for them.
When you're
I think I was right about that, actually.
When you're deciding where to go and what to write, what kind of, I mean, is there travel money for you to go anywhere? Will the nation send you anywhere?
No, usually the best way to do it is to just do it and then see if you can't sell the articles when you come back. That's what I had to do with Bosnia, for example. I thought I really must go and see what's happening in Sarajevo. I can't not go.
When did you go?
Last summer.
How long did you go there for?
In Sarajevo, 2.5 to 3 days and nights, which is not long, but it's plenty, I can tell you. Unless you are, as some good reporters are, able to put up with a lot by way of being sort of bombarded and shot at and kept permanently scared. I mean, I thought I'd got the point about being permanently scared after a few days. And it's also quite a small city, and I was able to see a lot of it. In the remainder of the country of Bosnia and surrounding bits of Croatia and Slovenia, rather longer, but not at such high risk. And I thought, really, I have to go. The problem was I had no particular credential to represent anybody, but I just thought it was a sort of responsibility to go and see what it looked like. And I've been I think I've bored you with this in the past. I've become very obsessed with it since. And then I just wrote a number of pieces and sort of made back the money of the ticket that way.
Do you travel as a British citizen or an American citizen?
British passport.
You intend to...
Well, rather, I mean, what I'd rather say is, and the reason I kept the British passport is a European passport, because as of 1992, there is now a Euro passport that makes you free to travel within the boundaries of 12 member countries, and I've always liked the idea of European unity, and so I held out for a Euro passport. So I travel as a European.
Will you ever change your citizenship?
Well, you ask me. I mean, if I said to you I'm an American, you'd say, but that's not true. You're really an Englishman, and I think I would always probably sound and seem to be English. So it would seem odd to me to say I was an American in England, or say I was an American here. So I have a green card, resident alien, as they say. And a European passport, and I sort of think that's a form of being an internationalist.
Going back to where
sound too pretentious.
Going back to where we started on your piece section of this book called Rogues Gallery. By the way, there are a lot of things we have not talked about in this book, and they have to do with your opinion of things other than American.
Yes.
How did you mix that? I mean, is this book being sold in both countries?
Sure.
Is it being sold? Is it being translated into any other language?
We haven't had any offers that I know about, but usually every book gets translated into Japanese these days. They're tremendously omnivorous in getting to read everything, and I'd love to see myself in Japanese.
How did you decide? This particular item is out of a thing called Dissent, fall of 1990. What's Dissent?
Dissent is the magazine that's associated with the late Irving Howe, who you may have read about. I say the late because he died, I think, the month before last. We're now in, the 1st of September today. Irving Howe was a great old self-made writer, scholar, essayist, socialist critic, best known for a book called World of Our Fathers, which is a wonderful account of the origins of Jewish life in New York, from the first immigration to the Lower East Side, and then the burgeoning out to become I guess, the most successful of America's minorities. And he discovered the writing in Yiddish of Isaac Bashevis Singer, who later won the Nobel Prize, who was scribbling away unknown in Yiddish-only kind of small magazines in New York, and he discovered him and had him translated and made him world famous. And he also founded a magazine called Dissent, which is published 4 times a year, I believe, and I write for occasionally.